It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Columbia, this is Houston, AOS, over. Setting up the flag now. Now, you can see the stars and stripes.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Knicks Wall podcast. I am Anthony Corbo. You can follow me on Twitter at Corbo Anthony. Joining me, as he does all the time, I've got my good friend Kyle Maggio. What's up, my man?
What's going on, everybody?
And you can give him a follow at Kyle Maggio on Twitter. Also joining us here on the show, the Knicks Wall podcast's own Mike Cortez. How you doing, man?
What it do?
At Cortez Era on Twitter. We're part of the Blue Wire podcast family. Thanks to our sponsor this week, Roman. You can give us a follow at the Knicks Wall podcast or at TKW podcast on Twitter, at the Knicks Wall on Twitter. Head to our iTunes, give us a subscription there. Head to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to us over there. Head over to the knickswall.com, of course, and check out all the fabulous writing our writers are putting up over there. We're going to have a full recap of the game against the Warriors tonight. We're recording a little bit before that game, so we're not going to be talking about that at all on here tonight. But right before we started recording, just as we started getting into things here, we got a little bit of a tidbit coming through the news from SNY's Ian Begley, friend of the pod, Ian Begley, who states that Steve Mills may not be long for this organization. From what Ian's saying is several members of the organization said this week that they fully expect Mills will be replaced as team president at the end of the season, if not sooner, unless the club somehow turns things around. And Steve Mills has obviously been around MSG for a long time. He got hired there initially in 2003. He left in 2009 and came back in a bigger role around 2013 and, been very famously in the spotlight since then. He's got several years left on his contract, as does Scott Perry. We haven't really heard much about him, but there's finally a little bit of smoke about Steve Mills. Seems to be like one of the most permanent fixtures of the Madison Square Garden company. Seems like there might be a little bit of smoke around his dismissal or reassignment to a smaller role or something like that. But Mike, let's start with you on this one. Do you put any credence into this report that Steve Mills is going to be fired at the end of the season?
No, he always manages to survive. He's like a cockroach. And I do believe he would be reassigned before he's outright fired. But I mean, just to quickly recap what he's done, he hired Isaiah Thomas. I think he participated in that trial, speaking on Thomas's behalf. Left in 2009, came back in 2013, and in between then, the Knicks had their most successful run. He comes back, they go immediately away from the modern way to play and have been a shit show since. So I can't think of any other reason why he isn't fired already. So I don't see anything changing from what's already happened the last 5 years that Dolan's going to get rid of him outright.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly feel the same way. As we know from the almost anything about me, is that I will believe anything when I see it and not a second before, especially with this franchise. And same rule applies here because, like Mike said, he's the cockroach that you just can't kill. He's always here and always present. So I don't know. I don't enjoy him being here. I would really be furious if he was simply reassigned. That to me is troublesome. We should know by now that him simply being associated with this franchise is a bad look, and bad things happen when he's here. So I can't fathom why that would be allowed. The only way that this should end is that he gets fired and Perry with him, and they clean house yet again for the 1,000th time in the last decade, and we start fresh. But I just can't see it. The reassigning just seems like the more Knicks thing to do, and where we'll likely end up in this situation, and he's just not going to ever leave the franchise. But I would love to be wrong. I'd love for Dolan for once to make the right decision. It would be nice, but we'll see what happens.
See, I don't. I think I'm actually going to go the other way from you guys. I think that. All right. I don't think that Mills will be outrightly fired. I think the reassignment route is a little bit more of what we're talking about here. But I think he'll be assigned out of basketball operations. I think that, obviously James Dolan is he's a sensitive guy, to put it lightly. And, he cares about his money. And I think as much as he's willing to give it out to people, I think he wants, I think he wants to see that people are at least earning the money that he's handing out to them. So I don't think that Steve Mills will be, outrightly taken out of the picture. I think he'll be put into a smaller role on more of the entertainment side of things where he has some background already. But as far as Steve Mills running a basketball team or really being involved in decisions, I don't think that that's anywhere really in the future for him. But like we're saying, he is a longtime associate of Jim Dolan, and I don't really see him being given the oust right away. I think that he's kind of going to be, for good or for better or for worse, kept around. But I do think that he is going to be out of the national conversation for quite some time.
Yeah, but how Dolan said, I'll step away, and he has stepped away in public. I think it's because Mills is there. People give Phil all the rightful shit that he did, but Mills was his GM, so I don't know why he gets a pass for that. And he also got a pass for immediately signing Tim Hardaway Jr. and just plummeting cap space. That's just not brought up enough. And then the trade itself, ESPN reported on it that Mills and Perry just basically blew smoke up our ass. Because he never really asked. I mean, Porzingis never really asked for a trade, and I don't know. I'm just fed up, man.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Porzingis stuff that's coming out today is kind of wild. It's the fact that I think it was Ramona Shelburne had the report earlier today, but that pretty much everything they said was like you're saying, just kind of smoke and mirrors going on here. It's that he really that. There was no demand from Kristaps to be out of here. There was no, there wasn't as much animosity as I think is made out to be. And, it was kind of just the Knicks covering their ass. But, I just don't think they really knew how to deal an asset of, that quality. And you heard it immediately after the trade, too, that there was, at least a dozen or more teams out there who were confused as to why they didn't even have an opportunity to, to be considered in the trade market to offer the assets that they had. So, the fact that there were people who weren't even being talked about, or that there were teams that weren't even having trade discussions brought up with, and we managed to get back for, Kristaps Porzingis or a couple of lower quality draft picks, and Dennis Smith Jr., who has been a non-entity for all of this season and most of the last season since he came over, I mean, that's just not good enough to keep, a president position for sure, but a GM position too. I'm. So I guess let me ask you guys this question then. Let's start with Kyle on this one. Let's say that Scott Perry is saved at the end of the year, but Steve Mills goes. What would be your reaction to a situation like that?
If they both got canned?
No, Scott Perry is safe, but Steve Mills is gone.
I mean, I wouldn't be thrilled because I think Scott Perry is bad at his job. So that would be frustrating. I wouldn't get keeping they'd be slowly peeling the Band-Aid off. It just doesn't make very much sense to me if that were to happen. So, I mean, I'd be happy. I'd be ecstatic that Mills was gone, but I wouldn't understand keeping Perry based on the horrific job he's done through this part.
I mean, it's rare that you see full-on front offices fired altogether, isn't it? Especially from the Knicks point of view here, where they're going to fire both the president and the GM in the same sitting. For me, it makes the most sense. I want to, once again, I would like to establish an entirely new, regimen in here who can kind of work something new in with this team, work something new in acquiring assets and moving players and, trying to get guys that fit together on the court. I would like something brand new to be there on both the president and the GM count, but it's not something that we see very often. I mean, we were just talking about Phil Jackson, and, how Mills essentially went from his GM to becoming the president of the team. It just seems like they're going to continue that path where if Mills is gone as president, then Perry gets moved into the president role, and there's a new GM there, and then Perry gets fired as the scapegoat next season, and then whoever the new GM becomes the president. It's just like it just seems to me like they have a bit of a formula to how to avoid this kind of PR pressure, and yeah, I just I don't really know what to make of it. I'm really kind of perplexed as to what happens at the end of the year here. Like, it really could be a situation where one of them is gone, both of them are gone, or neither of them is gone, and I really have no idea what to think.
I mean, does anyone think Scott Perry deserves to stay? I can't think of one move other than Mitchell Robinson.
The only thing, and Ian Begley mentions this in his piece, but the only thing that really Perry can hold on to with his job is that they haven't traded any first-round picks since he's been there, and they've only acquired first-round picks since then, which is kind of an old storyline about the Knicks not having any first-round picks for numerous years, which we've corrected, and it's not really so much a pat on the back, I think, as just kind of like good business. And then the other thing they say is his draft record so far. And I think that's kind of mixed, though. Like, obviously, Kevin Knox looks like a miss right now.
Stinks. Stinks.
Horrible.
Yeah, I mean, Mitchell Robinson was a good pick in there, too, so you got to give credit there.
Oh, no doubt.
But, and RJ is RJ, but, when you have the number 3 pick at that point with the 2 other guys off the board, it was kind of, from how it looked earlier in the, around the draft time, that was kind of a no-brainer pick. And then, Trier's undrafted, so I would say as much as Perry has had, like, it looks like a couple of hits in there, he's had some misses too. So it's really just the draft compensation they've been able to acquire. But I mean, it's not like they have, it's not like they've got a pick from a team that's at the bottom or anything like that. So I mean, I don't see enough personally from Perry's tenure to say that he should be safe. But I mean, he also does have a couple of years left on the contract. So I don't. It's really, to me, it's super up in the air at this point.
His free agent class has just been trash. I can't think. I mean, Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong. Any free agent that he's brought in that have given you any type of excitement? Besides, all right, Morris, but anyone else?
No, I mean, I can't lie. I was excited about Randall.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out. It hasn't worked out, and we'll see if changing coaches helps. But I was excited about Randall, and I thought that was at least a value deal that he had signed. But, I seem to be just as wrong as he was about that working out, at least in the early going. So, I mean, just keeping it a buck, I seem to be wrong about that. That one anyway. Morris, I was excited about.
Yeah, but you're not the GM of the team, man. Like, that's the problem here.
Right.
Like, you can be wrong about this.
Right. But my point is, like, I'm not just trying to rip him. Like, I'm just saying, like, objectively, some of this stuff hasn't worked out. Like, even the Marcus Morris thing, which I thought was a tremendous value signing, again, because that's an asset if you need it to be, like, in the situation you're in now. And, even that hasn't worked. And it's partly how him and Julius Randle work on the court together in different lineups. And it's just not really conducive for good ball. Typically, you want just one of those guys to be your 4, So it's just been strange because, they signed kind of good guys, but at the same time, it's like most of the money they tied up in just this summer was Julius Randle, Marcus Morris, and Bobby Portis. And you can't play 3 of those guys together, and you can barely play 2 of those guys together. You know what I mean? It's like that.
Right.
That can't happen. Like the 3 of them not being on the court together is one thing. You can make it work, staggering and being creative. If you can't even have both those, like 2 of those guys on the court successfully, then what are we doing here? The teardown is easy. That's why I was trying to forewarn people about all the Perry praise. And I have often said in this pod that I like Perry, and I thought that he was doing an okay job, a decent job, a solid job, but we needed to see more. And I was warning people that let's not put the cart ahead of the horse here. Like, he has to actually build a good team. Just drafting players in the draft doesn't mean that they're good players. Just because Kevin Knox is 20 years old does not mean that Kevin Knox is going to be good at 21 or 22 or 23. Like, he could be really bad at 20 and then just be really bad, period.
Right.
Like, so a lot of it's not really working out. for what he did to build a good team. It's just not that. That's how you judge a GM. Where's the progress? How much closer are we to whatever the goal is? And yeah, it's a rebuild, but you can't rebuild and all the young players, don't improve almost at all. And at this point, they haven't. You know what I mean? It's like, so what are we doing here? What is the point of any of this?
So we're gonna get into Mike Miller's now role in all of this. Now that, like Kyle is saying, you got to work out something with the rotations, and David Fizdale is no longer around. We have a new head coach in here, at least on an interim basis. But before I do that, I wanted to tell everyone out there about our sponsor this week, Roman. Talking about erectile dysfunction isn't easy. Usually we just brush it off or blame ourselves, saying things like, I lost my mojo. Or we avoid it altogether with excuses like, sorry, honey, I'm just not feeling it. But with Roman, it is easy to talk about it. With a real doctor who can prescribe real medication, it's simple, safe, and totally discreet. With Roman, you can get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. The doctor will work with you to find the best treatment plan if medication is appropriate. Roman will ship it to you with free 2-day shipping. The whole process is pretty straightforward, simple and discreet. Getting started is simple too. Just go to roman.com/bluewire and complete an online visit. Erectile dysfunction used to be tough to tackle, but now there's Roman. Complete an online visit today to connect with the doctor and take care of it. Just go to roman.com/bluewire to get a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. That's getroman.com/bluewire for a free visit to get started. getroman.com/bluewire. All right, guys. So Mike Miller has been the Knicks coach for 2 games now, going to be 3 by the time this pod comes out after the Warriors game. We had kind of a close one against Indiana, and then a complete blowout against the Portland Trailblazers in Carmelo Anthony's first game against the Knicks of this season, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a few. But I guess kind of quickly, is there any vivid differences that you're seeing from what David Fizdale is doing on the court that that Mike Miller is bringing to the table? Is he running the rotations any differently, like improvements, things that are worse even? Mike, how are you feeling about this?
I was actually encouraged. The Pacers game was obviously better. The first half, he kind of kept it to where Fizdale had, where he had the same starting unit and the same rotation for the most part. But the second half, you could tell he started to try and put his little spin on it. And one thing I loved was pairing Mitch and Morris at the 4 and 5. The minute that happened was a 7-0 run. Everything looked good. And I know Kyle's had to eat crow before on this pod. It's my turn. Elfrid Payton has been really good these last 2 games. I was dead wrong.
This goes for me too.
I still kind of like, before he got injured, he was looking pretty good out there and just able to run something. And I was, so I've definitely been on, I guess, Payton Island as much as you can be on Elfrid Payton Island.
Just quick before we go back to Mike, like I had actually watched a lot of Pelicans last year, specifically because of Julius Randle. And I did really like what I saw from Payton, but I was still skeptical because it seemed like kind of looter in the righty to me. And I knew that previously he really hadn't improved much year to year. So it didn't feel, and like, yeah, he did improve a little bit last year, nothing crazy, but like, it still didn't feel, it felt inflated to me. You know what I mean? And then I didn't feel it. And then he came here and he's been solid for the most part. I mean, there was a couple rough games, but I mean, he at least looks like a point guard, and Dennis, as much as I love him and believe in him, looks lost. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, I think half of my Payton hate was just me rebelling against Fizdale just because of last season. So I will add that grain of salt to that. But getting back to Miller real quick, I just like the way, like, he's just doing small little fixes, like just running a bunch of high pick and rolls, post ups. Like RJ had a post up on a smaller player. I mean, what a concept. And it's just like they just felt more aggressive. And then last night they just couldn't hit a shot. A lot of those shots were open. And the Pacers, they got to the point, the Blazers rather. The Blazers were guarding the Knicks like they were facing 5 Ben Simmons. It was just sagging off, making them shoot. So I think just this roster just stinks.
Let's get a little bit more into this game against the Trailblazers here. So the Knicks go down 115-87. They now have a 4-20 record on the season, 1-10 away from home, and are mired in a 10-game losing streak before tonight. It was not a good showing at all. I mean, I just kind of didn't even realize it at the time, but I'm pulling up the box score now, and I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 Blazers players who scored more than the Knicks leading scorer, who was Julius Randle. The Knicks just got simply outplayed at every turn. Dame Lillard scored, I think, 25 in the first half.
Yep.
It was just kind of an ugly game all around. A couple of spots you can point to, like Mike was saying, Peyton looked pretty good, even though nobody on the team could shoot. So, I mean, but I guess the real story to come out of the night, though, is, obviously I know everyone at the Knicks Wall and us particularly on this podcast have been more than hyped about Carmelo Anthony returning to the NBA this season. And he finally got to play against the Knicks for the first time. He comes back to the Garden in early January. But, I mean, like, did you guys, I mean, what did you... I guess just kind of like how to feel watching Melo out there again. Does it feel a little different than other times we watched him, like when he played for the Thunder or the Rockets or anything?
May I?
Yes, you may.
Are we speaking about Carmelo Anthony?
The one and only.
I don't know if you guys have heard, but
Stay Melo.
TKW has dropped an exclusive limited drop. And it's the Stay Melo pack. It's the Stay Melo pack. And we wanted to do something fun for the only guy who's brought us any positive memories over the last 2 decades. So we dropped a Portland Anthony jersey, and you can get that in a tee or a hoodie, and it looks fire. It looks just like the Blazers uniform. Really, really love it. I'm getting one myself in black. So go check that out. And we also dropped the Knicks one, his iconic number 7. It says Stay Melo on the front. So you can get that in a nice blue. It looks like the Road Away jersey. I like that one personally, but go get that while you still can anyway, because we are going to remove those really quickly. We're only doing a small batch of those. So I'll probably let it run for about a week, but if you don't get it in the next 7 days, like that's it. Like, and we've said this before, but we're actually not bringing these back this time. So get them while you can. Designtree.com/the Knicks Wall. Go check it out. Get these in while you can for Christmas shipping. But anyway, back to the game. He looks good in the Blazer uniform, man. Looks right. Looks like he should have been there a couple years ago,
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I mean, he definitely helps the Blazers in, just get that scoring punch going. I don't think he's going to be, is obvious. Like, I don't know. Do you guys think this is the last year of Carmelo Anthony?
No, I think he'll be back at least one more year, maybe even 2.
Interesting.
I actually think he might come back to Portland. Like,
oh yeah, I don't doubt that if they would have him.
Yeah, I think if he gives them pretty much what he's producing at, even if he's starting to dip a little bit with the efficiency, like they've needed a quality like guy who can stretch the floor like that. Even if he's a little inefficient, I think they're going to want to keep that around and maybe just try to shore up some of the defensive pieces around him. But
I'm going to go all in on Melo in a second here. I'm going to let us turn this into an entirely Melo talk. But before we do, is there anything on the Knicks side of things that you guys wanted to mention from this game?
Dennis Smith Jr. made a 3-pointer.
That is important. That's Ben Simmons level. That's who's the guy? Grant Williams, I think it was, made a 3 last night too. And like all Celtics Twitter was going nuts about it.
Is that the guy who doesn't iron his shirt, or is that
it's Robert Williams?
Oh,
yeah, whichever one isn't Time Lord. Yeah, but I mean, like that is important. I saw, like we were saying, nice passing from Peyton out there. There was a nice alley-oop from him to Mitchell Robinson from him. Yeah, I mean, like not a ton. I mean, I really didn't walk away from the game with a lot of takeaways. That game really didn't seem like I mean, that's one of those games where it really, like we've been talking about, it really doesn't matter who is coaching the team. It's just the Knicks are going to get shellacked, and there's really not much we can do about it.
Yeah, RJ's also been pretty bad.
Yes,
I don't want to talk about it yet because I want to give him a chance to flip it, but man, it's been brutal.
I will say on that note, just real quick before we go back to Melo, is yes, he hasn't been really good lately, but he still is showing more or less the things that we discussed with him having a high floor. Like, I do want to, like, I'm not even trying to be like the homer guy, but like, I do think that's an important part before we get stuck in the efficiency, which shooting, yes, it's a big deal. He needs to work on that and needs to get better for sure. But just being able to rebound like he does for his position and just being able to pass like he does, and he's actually shown to be a much better defender than I thought he was going to be. It's to me, I'm very encouraged. I think a lot of this other stuff, like he gets into the paint where he wants, he picks his spots. So to me, it's like, it's all there. It's just he needs to find the touch a little bit.
I mean,
and
we talk about ceilings and floors. Like, just look at how much better, even though RJ isn't playing well right now, like, look at how much better he looks than Kevin Knox.
He's so polished.
Yeah.
Like, he's like that's the thing with RJ. It's hard to describe. Like, he looks so raw, but he's so like composed at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, you could see, like, he's not as fluid maybe, but like his brain is there. Like, he knows exactly what he needs to do, but his body maybe hasn't caught up yet, kind of thing. And I don't want to like romanticize it too much, but that's a really smart, good young player. And like, I think like it's different than when we talk about Knox's inefficiencies. You know what I mean? Like, Knox, I'm worried about so much because I don't think he gets the game of basketball in the way RJ does. Like, I think RJ understands like the flow of the game, what he needs to do on a night-to-night basis, when he needs to step up a little bit more. Like we saw him with that wild night with the rebounds. What did he have? Was it 15, 17 earlier in the season? Yeah.
I believe it was 15.
Yeah, it was something stupid because I think he tied KP for his Knicks career high, and it was like his 10th game or something like that.
Yeah, 15.
15. Like, that's tremendous value to get that from your shooting guard. Like, so like these things, I don't want to sound like the homer, but like these are very important things. Like the inefficiency, like we'll talk about it, but his floor game is really nice and composed. Like he'll be fine. I'm fine with it.
Brian Gilberman is such a bastard. After this game, he did the thing where it's like, don't look. He said RJ and Evan Turner's rookie numbers, and it made me very sad.
Oh no.
Evan
Turner had,
it's not bad.
Yeah, he
bad,
had a moment in the, like, things kind of fell apart for him. There was a couple of years in there where Evan Turner was a very, very valuable role player, and like I wouldn't say even high end starter necessarily, but like he was definitely a starter for a couple of years there. He just kind of fell off real bad, and I mean, they're playing a little bit similar right now, but I expect RJ's game to mold out differently over the next couple of years. Like, I don't expect him to be quite the passer that he showed earlier in the year. The shooting obviously has got to improve a little bit and probably will, but I see the Turner comparison that Gibberman's making, but I'm waiting on it. It's a little too extreme.
He's just being mean.
Yeah, it's a little too extreme for me, which go figure. Yes.
One more thing, just with Kyle, like everything Kyle said, correct. And I feel like, I don't know, Steve Nash being such a close mentor just gives me blind faith in RJ. I don't know why, but it does.
No, that's cool. I'll take blind faith. Anything over what we got now. So, there. Let's turn this around a little bit here. So obviously Carmelo comes around. Obviously, the media is going to have a blast with that one out here. Kind of the last vestige of a star player that's existed in New York. And of course, the question comes up: should Carmelo Anthony have his number retired? He mentions afterwards that he would love to see the number 7 hanging up in the rafters. And I think that it's kind of been a conversation that's split up a lot of the fan base right now as to, what really should connote a player getting his jersey retired. Like, do the Knicks maybe have a bit of like a bit of a curve going on where it's like, their retired numbers doesn't stack up against some of the other retired numbers around the league, and things are a little bit different because of the Knicks' lack of success. But I guess let's just bring it back to the root of the question. Should Carmelo Anthony's number be retired, Kyle Maggio?
Oh boy, this is a loaded question. So I'd like to discuss this in the context of the franchise that is the New York Knicks and not what is the normal standard of an NBA franchise or professional sports franchise. I feel like that's where you need to lay the foundation, right? Normally what happens is people who contributed at the championship level or close generally, or had a sustained career in one spot. Normally that's what the jersey retirement is for. Now there's exceptions to that, obviously, for people who had shorter stints. But normally that's how it goes. I think, and I know that this is going to be the unpopular opinion, I think they should. In the context of what this team has done the last 20 years, and I don't even blame the latter half of his tenure here on him, because you sign a deal to be a premier scorer in the league. That's the deal that they made with him. They didn't make the deal with him to be LeBron James or to be an all-around superstar. They made the deal with Melo the scorer to extend him and keep him in New York. And they got 4 years of Melo the scorer. It's your job as the GM and the franchise to build around that. And they didn't. They gave him Shane Larkin and Andrea Bargnani and Jose Calderon. And what the fuck were we doing, man? Like, those were such horrible teams. You know what I mean? It's like, so to me, it's like, you got him in here. It was a clunky fit. You found a way to make it work, and then you ruined it. But, to me, he still provided. He did what he was signed to do. He's 7th all time in the franchise in scoring, if I'm not mistaken. He holds the record for, the points at MSG. And again, it's not much. I'm not trying to over romanticize his tenure here, but I just think, like, nothing has happened here in 20 years. And maybe that's not a good enough reason, but I don't think, it was for his lack of effort. He chose to come back here and try to win. And a lot of players, if they go to another team, had he joined the Bulls or something, he would have been just another superstar in the super team era, joining forces and blah, blah, blah. And he wasn't tough enough to do it on his own. And that whole narrative that we do all the time. And then in this instance, he does choose to stay in New York by himself and be the lone star and do it the old fashioned way and wait for the Knicks to get him some help. And they didn't do that. And I just don't know how much we can. And he has his warts in his games, and we know about the Jeremy Lin thing and the Mike D'Antoni thing. I'm not saying he's perfect, but to me, it's just, I think you got to do it. He's going to be a top 10-ish scorer when his career is over. I think the last meaningful years he spent in the NBA wearing your team, I think you probably got to do it.
It's a bit of an effort conversation too with him, right? Like, he is a guy who really, we watched it very, very closely, but he gave everything he could every night, pretty much every night on the court. There were certainly a couple of battles with him and, some of the other teammates he had. There's famously the Jeremy Lin situation. There's been times where he's been a little bit outspoken and everything like that, but he hasn't, he always seemed authentic while still being optimistic about the Knicks. He never really seemed like he was trying to, just kind of go along with the plan and blow smoke up everybody's ass out there. But he was very much trying to make the best of this situation. And, like you were saying, Kyle, he did everything that he had to do. He did everything that he was paid to do. I am still kind of torn on whether or not it should, like, in my heart, I obviously want this to happen. Like, obviously, Melo means a lot to me, during my tenure as a Knicks fan, and he's probably still my favorite player, that I've had the opportunity to watch and to just, play the game unlike anybody else, and he still has so many uniquenesses to his game. But like you said, he didn't really contribute to winning in a meaningful way in the playoffs. He only made the playoffs 3 times with the team, and only made it past these, into the second round once. He, never a conference final, never a final appearance. And, it's just, I think that if you are going to grade things on the Knicks curve of, you've been around for this long, you've given this much to the team, you've never made it to the finals, but you've still been a figure in this organization, then yeah, maybe the Knicks retire Carmelo's number. But it's hard for me to imagine a world where, I think that the Knicks might retire Carmelo's number, and then the Denver Nuggets might not. It's an interesting kind of thought to me that I would certainly let the Nuggets retire his number first, and then let the Knicks do it afterwards. But I don't know if either of those teams really do it. I have a feeling that he might end up being a little bit more of like a Bernard King situation, where the stint is just a little bit short. The winning was just not there, and the exit was not necessarily smooth with the franchise. So I don't know. I'm torn. I think I'm leaning a little bit more no than yes, but my heart certainly wants that number to be in the rafters.
Yeah, I think if he does, I think they should also add Bernard and Oakley as well. Just because
Oakley needs to get retired first, I think.
I think all they need to make a streak, a year of just those three going in, like at different times. Obviously,
they need to make the Oakley thing right.
Yeah,
and for people who are going to scoff at that or are mad at him over the anti-Knicks stuff he's done over the last decade,
I don't think anybody really is.
I don't know. I've gotten some backlash on Twitter for hey man, Oakley's got a point. Everyone's just shut the fuck up, old man. So trust me, they know who they are if they're listening. There's enough of them. So. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, my thing, they got to make that right. The only way to do, and anybody's going to say anything, you don't. Haslam in Miami is going to get his jersey retired. Sometimes those role players on good teams, they get that. And in a situation like this where he's been wrongfully banned for quite some time now, thrown out of the Garden, dragged out. I mean, you gotta come on. Retire his fucking jersey. Come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah, the only retired jerseys are all from the championship team, Ewing, obviously, and Tricky Dick McGuire. That's not that many numbers retired. I think they could spare 3.
There's also guys like Starks you would have to consider in there as well. There are other guys other than Ewing from that 90s team. Some people would argue for Mason. It just depends on where the tipping point is with that conversation, I guess. It's just at what point are you where does Melo fall on that divide? Is he, whether he ends up being worthy of that or not, I think he's kind of close to the line there.
Yeah, I think add the added context of Melo coming here when no one else will or at all still. I think that has to go someplace, and him just sticking it out. It's just, I don't know. I feel like it sounds hypocritical because his numbers just don't scream you have to retire his number, but he's the only one that's come here.
And I think if you want to argue against it, I'm really not going to argue you. I understand. This is me kind of torn both ways, just kind of going, well, I would retire it. I think it's the thing to do with the context of this franchise, but it makes plenty of sense if you say no too. It's just, at some point, I don't even want to say it's a participation trophy, but it's at some point, we're going to sit through another decade of miserable Knicks basketball and not appreciate any of the stars who come here for any period of time. It's maybe give it to the guy who's here 7 years. And,
do you think it's a good upside PR play too? If you I feel like
they got nothing to lose.
That's the thing too.
Right.
Right. They already always make the wrong decision. Try it again. What happens? You get laughed at. You know what I mean? What are we?
Right.
Try it.
Right.
See what happens.
I mean, the Warriors retired Chris Mullins' number. I don't think Chris Mullins led the Warriors in much. I mean, they were a fun team, but he wasn't Michael Jordan of Golden State, and he got his number retired. And just to play conspiracy, retirement night was their rock bottom. So right after that, Curry era started. So
Well, like, yeah, and it's not like they can even say that they don't want to water down the franchise or anything like that. Like, what have we been watching for the last 20 years? Like, they have the leniency to retire that and get the PR bump. Also, Kyle, just wanted to say you were dangerously close to your fourth "What Are We Doing Here" of the podcast. But you caught yourself, and I'm proud of it. Also, I just spilled wine all over my keyboard. Before we get out of here today, let's just take a quick look at what the Knicks got coming up ahead of them. So the Warriors game will be over by the time you all hear this podcast. We don't know what's going to happen yet. Do we want to make a bold prediction before that?
A lot of missed shots from the Knicks.
D'Angelo Russell is back, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
That's not going to be good. Yeah, Knicks are going to lose this one. We got the Kings after that on Friday, who the Knicks famously cannot beat. The Nuggets, who the Knicks also struggle against. I mean, who are we kidding? We're 4-20. And then the Hawks on Tuesday. So from any of those three matchups, is there anything you guys are particularly looking out for? I know I have my eye on one player on the Kings in particular as a trade target in Bogdan Bogdanovic, but I guess other than him or including him, what are you guys hoping to glean from the next few days?
Just better basketball, like really, really simply, just better basketball. Like more games like the Pacers, bare minimum. And I hate the part, like the moral victories here. I hate those. But again, the bar is hell right now with this franchise. They need to win desperately. They're playing the other league worst team tonight. So, maybe just find a way to get a win just one time. It'd be nice, just figure it out. Just please. This should not be worse than a 17-win team a season ago. Just please win a single basketball game.
I'm interested in the Hawks game. Trey versus Frank is my favorite rivalry. I think Trey just doesn't do well against Frank, so that should be fun. And also, I want to see how Cam Reddish looks. I haven't really watched as much Hawks as I've wanted. I just know Reddish has been pretty bad, aside from his game against the Nets.
I've watched a little. He's been rough. He's been really rough.
What did Coach K do to these kids? Zion can't get on the court. RJ can't hit a shot. Cam just stinks. I don't know. But yeah, that's the game I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, well, lots to come up in the future. We have the beginning of the unofficial trade season will begin before our next recording as well. So there could be some interesting things to talk about, especially, namely Marcus Morris coming up soon. Some rumors floated out today about him could potentially be moved for a late first round pick, which is exciting to see. Really quick, just really, really quick. Give me a quick answer on this one. Is Morris going to get traded for that first at all during the season? Yes or no?
No.
Yes.
Ooh. I'm going to go with no as well, because that's just how optimistic I am around here. Until Marcus Morris gets traded, you can follow us at TKW Podcast on Twitter, at the Knicks Wall on Twitter. Go follow at Blue Wire Pods as well. Head to knickswall.com. Check out all of our great features and all of our stories, previews, recaps, breaking news. Mike, you have anything new going up anytime soon?
Yes, on Friday, I take a look at our fourth quarter scoring, and just a spoiler, it's ugly.
Can't wait for that. Yeah, so go check that out. Check out all the other great work we have going up there. There's always a reason to be excited about the Knicks, as long as the Knicks Wall's fantastic writing staff is reporting on them. Yeah, I guess that's really about it for this week. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will talk to you all next week.